No. No. Yeah, I can hear something now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now, Nivedita, uh, Pangliana's body, when they went down and got my man from there, they picked up Pangliana's body and also brought him. He was bleeding, and they gave him first aid in the post, and they waited for the helicopter by daylight. This was all happening about 4 in the morning. So the helicopter came at about 6 o'clock to Turiel, and my brigade major got in there. And when the pilot told him that, look here, this helipad is not, there's no helipad there, we can't land. So the chap took out his pistol and said, I order you to land, otherwise I'll shoot you up. So the pilot said, put that toy away. If you shoot us, you'll also die, we'll also die because the helicopter will crash. What's your problem? Then it was very secret, this patrol. My GM had to explain to them there's a special patrol which has got hold of the underground boss of Mizoram, and we have to pick them up. He said, why didn't you say that before? We'll see what we can do. So they said, you give us the direction to land at Nopa because we have to inform the air control in Shillong. So he gave the direction of Nopa, which is in the same direction. And that's an well-established helipad. The Air Force in Shillong accepted them landing there, but they went beyond Nopa to this village. Now they had in the village a little playing field for volleyball or something for the people to play, but it was not flat. It was tilted by about 30 degrees because it's a ridge line and they don't have any method of leveling it, so it was tilted. So the helicopter, I must say, how brilliant those helicopter pilots are. When there is an emergency of this time, how they function. He came down on this helipad. Only one of his skids, even they got two skids at the bottom. Only one skid was touching the ground, the other was up in the air. He gave full power to keep it level. He said, now get your patrol on board fast. The patrol was waiting near that place, and they all, 5 men of the patrol, including the man with the bleeding ear, were shoved inside. And Pangliana's body was brought in because he was very badly injured. He was still alive with bandages all over his torso since his spine had been injured. And it took them another couple of hours to fly back to Turiel. And then they came up by transport to Aizawl, and we moved Pangliana straight to a field military hospital. Now, the field military hospital is just a kacha building with a table. There's nothing sophisticated over there. But we had a couple of very good surgeons, young captains from the Army Medical Corps, and a physician and an anesthetist. So they straight away put Pangliana on the table and operated him. Then they said, we want blood. So we got his blood group, and I sent 24 men to give blood to Pangliana to try and save his life. The Mizos, the local people, they get to know about these things very fast. And they came to know that their hero, the underground leader, Colonel Pangliana, has been injured. They didn't know how, because they didn't know that we had a clandestine patrol. They thought that two underground groups had had a fight, maybe a Naga group and a Mizo group. And their dear leader, Lieutenant Colonel self-styled Pangliana, had been badly injured, but the military saved him, brought him back to the hospital, and 24 Indians have given blood to try and make him help him to get alive. So we worked on him for about 2 days, but then he passed out. So this was the operation. And normally we used to get very bad press for anything that happened in Mizoram. As I told you earlier, the press were under threat of the underground that you cannot compliment the military for anything. So for the first time, we got a very complimentary press of all the newspaper sheets, just a single sheet. They used to publish to say that we must give compliments the Indian Army and the brigadier and the colonel of so and so post, because they tried to save our Pandya. 24 Indians gave their blood, but they couldn't save him. Poor man was killed by some action by underground patrols. So here was an operation where we managed to kill the top man of the insurgent group in Nagaland and got a very complimentary press also. Now, I had promised these 5 people who came that should any one of them be killed, I will get them to their wives and to their families a very good compensation. I said, Government of India itself will give about 2-3 lakhs, which I'll get. And from my own funds in the brigade, I'd give another 2 lakhs. Plus, we will recruit anybody who has a son or something into the Assam Rifles or into somewhere, so that we look after family and the widow for the rest of it. This is the promise I made. Now, out of these 5 chips, I think about 4 were married and 1 was unmarried. But luckily, they all came through. In fact, the fellow whose ear was cut off, bitten off, was a bachelor. Anyway, we repaired them and we gave them a lot of good compensation, monetary and otherwise. Then I wrote a DO letter straight to the army commander, that was Naveen Rawley, Lieutenant General Naveen Rawley, to explain. Now, what I did was, I gave the actual citation under a top secret cover. This was a clandestine patrol and this is what these men have done. Then I gave a false citation along with that of some other reason to give them awards. So they all got some medals and awards, which had monetary benefits like Kirti Chakra and Shaurya Chakra and things like that, for a very good action that had been conducted. The patrol leader got a Kirti Chakra, which has a monetary benefit also. But these were under false citations. The actual citation was also sent separately in a top secret cover, and the army commander was requested to destroy that. Because all these underground people, they take revenge. So if they know who has done whatever has done, then for the rest of their life, they'll be sending people to that family or to that place to take revenge.
Right.
So I didn't want their identities to be known. Even the commanding officers of the various units from whom I selected people didn't know who the exact chaps were. And second thing was that I posted all these 5 out of Mizoram. Back to their home stations, wherever it was, in UP or Punjab or wherever they belonged to, or Nagaland, not Nagaland, but Darjeeling, others, wherever they came from. I sent them back to different postings, which I asked the army commander to permit, and he did. And nothing more was said of it. So nobody knew who did. And their citations were under false names. I mean, the false citation was given under their name, so they got their awards once they left Mizoram, with the result that I think till today, nobody knows who they are, and I am not giving you their names either. This was my demonstration of how an action can take place without torture. And it was very impressive to every battalion commander in my brigade. And they all took stern measures to prevent torture and to try and do good patrolling, etc., and catch people in their respective areas of responsibility. I got a very good compliment from the army commander, and also a compliment to these 5 men. Of course, they'd been posted out. He did not give any compliment to the units because I never told him which units they belonged to. So this was the underground patrol, the only one of its type ever done in the Northeast. And later, we have a training area where you enter Mizoram from Assam. That's the Kachar district of Assam. Southward, there's a town called Verangte. Very thick bamboo jungles exist, etc. And where there's a training establishment called the Counterinsurgency and Jungle Warfare School, CIJW School. We sent many officers and men for training there. They asked me to come and give them a talk about insurgencies and how to deal with them. And so I gave them this talk. I told them about this patrol that we ran without giving them any details as to who these people were, what is their identity, because of their safety required. But nonetheless, we did kill the topmost leader of the underground. It's the Zebra Patrol. I haven't written about this. It's the first time I mention it. Hopefully by now, all those interested are dead and gone, and therefore revenge should not take place. In any case, they don't know who did what. And now more about Mizoram. The next incident I want to tell you about is that the underground gave a threat that we are going to kill a top functionary of the government of India in Mizoram, so that all you foreigners, or they call the foreigner Y, W-A-I, Y. Y is a foreigner. So it said, all you foreigners will get so frightened you'd run away. So we'll kill a top man. So when this information came, because what they do is they have notices put up on a piece of paper in Mizo and stuck over various poles and buildings and walls and so on, so everybody can read what the underground is saying. And by the way, the government of India noticed that there is no milk in Mizoram. Nobody drinks milk there.
Oh.
They don't have any milk animals like goats or cows. In fact, they eat. The mithun is there. The mithun is a big bull-type animal.
Right.
They kill them and eat them. They don't have any milk. And they don't have tea.
Oh.
Right? They have their own brews to drink. And their own sort of curries they make out of all sorts of animals, which is horrible tasting. I can assure you, please don't ever taste it. Because I've been to some of the dinners. If they call an Indian to a dinner, then they have two sets of cooked meals. One is the miso food and one is the Wai food. That means this, what they think that the Bengalis and the Assamese and the Punjabis would like to eat. Rice and dal and some meat curry. What they cook is so horrible tasting, I don't know what to do with it. You can't stomach it. Anyway, so what they do is the government of India, to appease the local population, said, oh, these poor chaps don't drink milk or they don't drink tea, so they sent in a whole lot of tea packets and condensed milk powders, tins. Say, come on, have this. You know, this is a welfare measure for the people from the Home Ministry. So they used to use the condensed milk, then open it and use it as gum to post these notices. So whenever you saw a notice, it was smelling of condensed milk because it was stuck on the wall with condensed milk. That shows you. They still don't drink tea, nor do they drink milk. Even now. It's a tribal culture. And not understood by the rather sophisticated Indians in Delhi. Anyway, they gave this threat. So I started studying. I first went to the Lieutenant Governor. I must tell you about the Lieutenant Governor. So it was Mr. Mukherjee, very nice man. And what happened to him was that he was coming in a car with escorts, armed escorts on both sides. You know what armed escorts? You have a jeep in front, a jeep at the back with a machine gun at the ready. Governor's car in the center. And you come up from Virangte, which is about 2.5, 3 hours run to Aizawl. On the way, there is a big town called Koloseb. He crossed Koloseb, and between Koloseb and Aizawl, his convoy was ambushed by the underground. And they fired a whole lot of bullets from the side of the hill, and then the convoy drove off. But one of those bullets went through the governor's car and hit him in the leg. So he got injured in the leg. So anyway, we got that information from the escort straight away on radio, and we ordered that the convoy should come straight to our military hospital. They came straight to our military hospital, and the governor was duly placed on the table, and the bullet was removed from his leg. And while we were doing that operation, the Mizos were all looking through the windows in order to see what we are doing. Because, you know, they don't have medical systems like this. So we had high windows, but they climbed one above the other and they peep in through the windows to see what we were doing to the patient. They saw how we dealt with Pangliana, as I told you, and now they saw how we removed the bullet from Mr. Mukherjee. So Mukherjee and us became very good friends because we saved his leg. He got posted out shortly later, and a man called Mr. Chibber came there with his wife to Raj Bhavan, to Raj Nawaz, the Lieutenant Governor's job. We came to know him also. We had the chief secretary was a man called Ram Agarwal. He later became chief secretary in Delhi also, because this is the union territory cadre, since Mizoram was a union territory at that time. Now it's a state. And so he was chief secretary there and a very helpful man. And we had an SDM called Vinod Duggal. Now, Vinod Duggal, the deputy commissioner who's a Mizo, his name was Roman Thanga. I was very friendly with the deputy commissioner. He had about 9 years service, which to them in the Mizo uh, administrative service, 9 years service was a very senior officer. The rest of the DCs in southern districts of Lunglei and Longtalai for the south was a 2-3 years service. This is the deputy commissioner. He had a lot of responsibility. He and I became very good friends, and his family also. The SDM under him was Vinod Duggal. Vinod Duggal had been a captain in the artillery, Indian Army, as a temporary commissioned officer. And after he'd done his 5 years in the military, and funnily enough, his battery commander and the gunner unit in which he was posted was my brigade major, this Madan Verma. So he used to visit us, and now he's done the IAS. He gets that. And he was a very bright young man, very ambitious. We made good friends with him, but he kept a very good check on us also. Because any prisoner we caught anything, he wanted to know rules there are that if you catch underground prisoner, you cannot hold him. You have to hand him over to the police.
Okay.
So we did want to interrogate these people. It takes a day or two to interrogate, but many times we caught them in distant areas of Mizoram, and they had to be transported by foot. Sometimes for 2 days and 2 nights. So when we give the location of where we've caught him, we should tell the local police that, look, he caught him there. It will take 2-3 days to bring him here. And actually, we interrogated him while we were bringing him. And then by the time we came to Aizawl, we had to hand him over to the superintendent of police, who also he was a very stern man. He also became a friend of mine, but he kept a very close eye on us. They all were suspicious that the army was capturing people and doing things to them which were not accepted by the law. So they were after us all the time. Anyway, we made good friends with them. Now, so the new governor came in, and I used to be invited to various functions by the government. For instance, 26th January functions, 15th August function. 26th January, I was invited there. There's a bit of a large ground. It's the SM Rifles playing ground, actually, which the government used to use for such functions, and the flag hoisting and all that sort of thing, and some speeches. And I came to know that 26th January 1974, the flag raising ceremony for the Indian tricolor was done in every district. Now, Kolosov was a district, as I just mentioned, with a big town between Varagte, where Mizoram starts, and Aizawl. Halfway between was this big town called Kolosov, where I had a CRPF attack. So I came to know through my intelligence, because, we had what is known as intelligence and field security company. We have money, and this is led by a captain. It's a company in which there are about 8 or 9 military officials, and we can hire local people as intelligence agents.
Okay.
We had about 15-20 Mizos. You pay them well, and they are moving around in the town and in the jungles. If we instruct them to give us certain information, they bring sometimes very valued information because they're being paid for it. They have a good job. We pay well for intelligence. So as I said, the IB has its own system. The RNAWs for external intelligence, they don't have much to say to you. But the IB, especially a deep friend of mine, had a lot of information about the movement of hostiles and so on in Mizoram itself. And he helped me with this zebra patrol by giving the identities and so on. But we had our own field security section, which was also getting information from everybody. Now, the Mizos gave a threat they'll kill some top man of the Indians so that the Indians get frightened and run away. No matter what we explain to them, that the Indians don't get frightened and they don't run away. So I checked up from the lieutenant governor downwards, then the chief secretary, then the deputy commissioner. Then I knew I myself was very well guarded because I was in my headquarters with excellent guarding systems.
Mm.
I decided to visit the head of the Mizo police.
Okay.
Now, the head of the Mizo police was a man called, he was an IG, Inspector General of Police from UPPSC. His
Okay.
name was Gamandi Singh Arya.
That's
And he and I had become good friends because, he's the local policeman. And I drove in my Jonga to his office, which is in the middle of the town.
mm.
Now, where the eyes out town is, a very thick town, there's a small road that goes off to one side, and there's a little gate, and that's the police headquarters. You go into the gate, manned by Mizo police. And at the moment they see you, me with my star and a brigadier's flag, they give us a rope. So I come in. And the very first little building on the side is the IG's office.
Yes.
And I'd asked them, uh, Mr. Gamandi Singh Arya, that he has to help me by recording all the 3 lakh population of Mizoram,
Mm.
give them identity cards.
Okay.
Now, he said it's impossible to give identity cards to 3.5 lakh people. I said, why? He said, it's a joke. I mean, where do we get all this? We have to spend this money and do this, that. I said, spend it. I'll also give you some funds. Now, Nivedita, just think. In our country, we have now got the Aadhaar card,
Yeah.
which gives identification to 2.5 billion people.
Mm.
There's no country in the world which can do that. Just imagine what we have achieved.
Mm.
In France, you have a social security number or something.
Mm.
This Aadhaar card identity, which everybody sneers at,
Mm.
is unique
Mm.
in the world.
Mm.
And there in 1973, 74, and early 75, when I was there, this police head was telling me it's impossible to make identity cards for 3.5 lakh people. Anyway, I insisted. So these 3 gentlemen used to sit in that room. That's the IG, his DIG,
Mm.
in charge of CID. CID is the police intelligence division, Central Intelligence Division. The police also has an intelligence group.
Correct.
So the DIG CID and the SP CID
Okay.
and the IG used to sit there trying to make lists of all the measures. Because until you make a list, the address, the name, the family members, how can you make a card? Okay. Because many of them have duplicate names. And so I said, unless you give this to the army and we capture somebody, we know he's a terrorist, that name.
Mm.
But there may be 2 or 3 other people with the same name. So I said, I want to know. Anyway, they were doing that job. So I went and met him. And I walked into his office and he offered me a cup of tea. So I said, Mr. Arya, the problem is that your gate is looked after by a Mizo police contingent, a section of Mizo police.
Mm.
And you are sitting here just next to the gate. You've got a big police headquarters here. Why don't you shift your office
Mm.
to the back end so that somebody who wants to come and kill you, because they've said one of the senior Indians would be killed.
Mm.
I said, I have checked the governor and the chief secretary and all that. Who else is senior? So myself, I am very well guarded, but look at you, you're not guarded at all. So you would be the target of the underground. So I said, first you've got a Mizo police. And what will happen is that the underground will dress itself in Mizo police uniforms and they will enter, get a salute and come and get you. So the first thing you must do is to put CRPF.
Okay.
He had CRPF also. Put CRPF on your gate. And the second thing is move your office from here to the back end
Mm.
of your police buildings. He started laughing at me.
Mm.
He said, Brigadier, I am a police officer. I am not a soldier who has to keep himself away from the public. I am public.
Mm.
And I am the head of the Mizo police, and these Mizo police boys are my boys.
Mm.
I am the IG. And if they want to shoot me, they can go ahead and shoot me. But I am not doing anything such thing because my job is to be one-to-one with.
Mm.
That's the way I have to control the police. So I said, that's very brave of you. But I think a little precaution is no harm because we've got an underground here and things might go wrong. So, Nivedita, unfortunately, what happened was that a police jeep came dressed in Mizo police uniform, with a police SP sitting on the driving wheel. As he passed through the gate, the Mizo police gave them a nice salute. And then three of them got off their jeep, walked into the IG's office, and within 2 seconds shot all three of these officers.
Oh, no.
Shot them dead with approximately firing 2 to 3 rounds in each direction.
Oh, no.
So in that little office, the IG was lying dead, the DIG CID lying dead, and the SPCID lying dead, with all those papers they were doing for me. The moment the shooting took place, I went there to investigate along with my intelligence section, and the IB was also investigating, everyone was investigating, and saw that. So, and these people, after shooting him, got back into the jeep, fired a few rounds in the air, and all the Mizo police were guarding the gate, ran away, and they just drove off. They were all dressed in police uniform. Now, in our intelligence, it took us a couple of weeks. We came to know that the man who had done this was a self-styled Captain Lalaya. Captain Lalaya, therefore, became a target. And I said to the governor and to the chief secretary, we have to capture and either capture or kill this Captain Lalaya, otherwise we've got a black mark. Our IG has been shot and we have to do something about it. So we put out a lot of intelligence ideas as to find out who did this. We came to know it was Captain Lalaya. Who is Captain Lalaya? He is a damn good underground leader, and he functions around the town of Isel in the surrounding villages. Next question was, where does he get his information from? How did he know what time and what date to go to the IG's office and do this killing? We went into that. And we suspected that information from the IG's office was being given to him. Therefore, we looked at all the staff of the IG as to what work they were doing on that date and what papers and knowledge they had of the IG's program. When we did this for 2-3 weeks, with the assistance of the local IB also, my intelligence section came to the conclusion that the main person who could have known exactly the IG's program, when he went, when he came, when he would be in the office, was his personal assistant, the PA. And the PA was a woman. So we captured this woman, brought her to the brigade headquarters and put her under custody to interrogate. Now this Vinod Duggal and others were ordered that, look, these army chaps have caught hold of a Mizo woman and God knows what they're going to do with her. So they were checking with us every few hours. What are you doing? Where is the woman? We want to see her. You're not torturing her. You're not doing. He said, lay off. We are just interrogating her. And we tried to interrogate this woman. We had a captain who was an intelligence officer. We interrogated her. Some other officers also. Some majors were good at interrogation. She wouldn't come out with anything. Then we decided to look at her, where she lived. Now she had a hut which she owned, and she had a piece of hillside of about a couple of acres, in fact. She had a side of a hill with a lot of trees growing, and she had this hut in the middle. Now what we understood was that those weapons had been used. There was a German G2 rifle, because the bullets, you see which are the bullets, to collect all the bullet pieces that went through the bodies and stuck in the walls and all that. They were all bamboo balls. We knew that a Sten machine carbine had been fired and a G2 rifle had been fired. And we also knew there were 3 weapons that had been fired by these 3 people. We knew what the weapons were. And we had got the bullets. So we started searching our house. Searched the whole house, everywhere, because these weapons have been hidden somewhere, because these weapons can't be carried. See, after all, the underground is walking around in the streets just like anybody else. You can't carry a weapon there, otherwise you'll be captured. So the weapons are buried somewhere. So we got suspicious of this woman's house, and we searched the whole thing properly. And for 2 days of searching, I had a whole battalion working on it, with the Subedar Major Saab in charge. So they said, Saab, kuch nahi mila. We find nothing. They dug all over the place. So I went there and I looked around and I found a shack which is about 20 yards away from the hut. I said, what's in that shack? They said, that's the latrine.
Okay.
I said, so then I asked the Subedar Sahab, I said, have you checked the latrine? He said, that's full of muck. We don't want to go there. I said, all right, give me the spade, I'll go there. So I took the spade from him and I walked off there. I said, they have a platform with holes in it and there's a trench underneath where all the stuff goes.
Right.
Just come, we have to remove this platform and go into the thesis, which is lying there and search. So I said, you can't do it, I'll do it. So I had my brigade major and another captain say, come on, chap, we'll do it. These chaps are a little afraid of the dirt. He said, no, sir, if you don't do it. And then they got encouraged to do it themselves. Took the top off and we dug through that muck and we found an oiled plastic bag with all the weapons inside. Took it out and we had the weapons. Now, the the man who was in charge of the police investigation was a chap called Surendranath. This is an interesting man. He was head of the forensic laboratory in Calcutta. So he had also come to Mizoram to assist in the investigation, and he told me that if we get the weapons, we'll be able to connect the bullets with the weapons and make a case against these people. So I said, fine. And we got the weapons. So we handed these weapons over to Mr. Surendranath. He sent them to Calcutta with the bullets. And after about a couple of weeks, the forensic results came that yes, these bullets that killed these three people have come from this weapon, and this. So we have connected the weapons with the bullets that were fired. That was the police investigation. Now after that, the question was the people, because we've got fingerprints, etc., from the weapons. Now the idea was to capture Captain Lalaya and bring him to task and send him to court and have him hanged if necessary. Anyway, since the police chief had been killed, we asked UPPAC to send another officer as IG police, because we said that if the IG has been killed, pronto he should be replaced by another man. But you won't believe it, no police IG from UP was ready to come to Mizoram. Because it's a punishment posting in a way that all bureaucrats and governor and others are under threat because there's an underground movement there, which is antagonistic to the Indians. Nobody would come. Then we applied to the other states. We went to Madras and to Maharashtra and we went to Punjab to get a IG. Nobody was prepared to send an IG to Mizoram. So then I rang up Mr. Ashwini Kumar, who's the Director General BSF. Now, if you recollect, I told you earlier that after the 1965 war with Pakistan, General Chaudhary, the chief, had suggested to the government to raise a border security force. That the army should man the borders. We should be away. We need a police force which is armed to look after the criminalities, drugs and weapons and all that coming across. Besides other things, they have the arrest powers. Army doesn't have arrest powers. So the BSF was raised by Mr. Rustamji. And Mr. Rustamji retired after 2 years, and Mr. Ashwini Kumar became the DG BSF, and he is a cousin of mine, first cousin. So I rang up Ashwini in Delhi, and I said, come on, Ashwini, all the police are bloody well afraid of coming to Mizoram. You send me an officer to be the IG from the BSF. He already let me look around. Now he had a number of IPS officers under him. None of them was prepared to come. So he got a military officer. He's a brigadier posted in Jammu. When they retire, many brigadiers were taken and lieutenant colonels were taken from the army to help run the BSF. They were not given any promotion. So this brigadier's name was Gurnam Randhawa. He's a brigadier who had commanded a brigade in the northeast, which is insurgency in Manipur and other areas. Well known for his capability. He had commanded a very good infantry brigade. But then he retired and then BSF took him on. So he was a DIG BSF in Jammu region. So he was offered by Ashwini Kumar, look here, you are a brigadier, I'll promote you to IG. If you accept going to Mizoram, he said, okay, I'll go. He said, Ashwini said, you take the next plane tomorrow morning from Jammu. This is the next plane, and after a day, and a half, I think. He landed in Turial and he arrived in Mizoram. Gurnam Randhava. The moment he arrived, I brought him into my mess, gave him a good meal, received him well, made sure that he had proper quarters in the police lines so that he would be comfortable. Said anything you want to take from the army. Okay, he's a military man who is now acting as IG, and he was now IG police of Mizoram. So Gurnam Randhava came there. And Gurnam Randhava and I used to discuss how to capture this Mr. Lalaiya. So we had his intelligence and my intelligence working out to where is this captain? We got information where he is going. All right. So then Gurnam Randhava told me that look, today the Mizo police, Mizoram police, does not have an area of responsibility. You see, everywhere the army is doing the job. You give me an area of responsibility which I am responsible for, and you don't come. So I said, all right, we sat down with a map, and both of us worked it out. And I didn't want my army to be too much in the town because, you know, army does not like to deal with civilians in the town. Out in the open, yes, in the villages, etc., we were quite capable of doing what we had to do. But when there are too many people, there's a lot of politics going on. And then the deputy commissioner and others are all checking on you very carefully. What are you doing? In case you're doing something wrong. And so is the governor, so is everybody else. I said, look, this is a police work. So you take the town, I'll take the rest of Mizoram. He said, all right. So we sat down and we made a boundary around Mizoram. Couple of kilometers around Mizoram, we made a boundary. We said outside this boundary is the army job. Inside the boundary is a police job. And we agreed, we signed a paper and we marked the map, signed it. And then I sent this to my headquarters in Masimpur to my general. When he received it, he gave me hell of a tell, What nonsense. You are responsible for everything. Why are you giving responsibility to the Mizo police? I said, he's a police getting paid by the government. Let him do his work also. The general said, no, all the accolades, the very success must come to the army and not to the police. I said, he's a government organization. Even if he gets some accolades, how does it bother us? We're getting plenty of, we've got plenty of accolades. No, I take a dim view of what you've done. I said, oh, too bad, but it's already done. So Gurnam and I were on a good day.